Welcome to Floristry at SWSi TAFE. My name's David Berger and today we're going to do a wreath in a floral foam base. I'm going to start by beveling the edges of the floral foam so that they're a 45-degree angle to the edge of the plastic base on the foam. This is going to allow me to make a domed profile with the greenery that I'm going to add to the foam. I've taken a 45-degree bevel off the outer edge and a 45-degree bevel off the inner edge, making this domed shape from the oasis. I'm going to use some viburnum and some leather fern in a combination. What I want to ensure is that I place the stems of the greenery angling down so that they're going to cover the base of the wreath. I'm going to place them on an angle to do this, and I'm going to go around the wreath in a circular motion, placing the stems of greenery of the viburnum, which has been pre-cut into smaller lengths, around the edge, the outer edge of the wreath frame first. When I move to the inner side of the wreath frame, I want to make sure that I pick out smaller pieces of the greenery that aren't going to block in the space that's in the middle of the wreath. I want to retain that circular void within the middle of the wreath. I'm going to continue to place the viburnum completely around the wreath ring, and I'm placing it on the sides first, placing it on an angle, but also making sure that my insertion is at the very base of the floral foam, just above the plastic lip that's holding the oasis in. I don't want to make any insertions above this point to dress the outside ring and the inside ring with greenery. I want to leave the top of the foam for the placements that will start to build the domed shape. I've now completed putting the outer and inner ring of viburnum into the oasis wreath frame. As you can see, the void in the center of the wreath is still exposed. This is quite important to maintain the shape of the wreath. And I've left the top floral foam exposed so I can finish off greening with more viburnum and leather fern. The other key thing to note is that the viburnum has been placed in one circular motion, so all the tips of the viburnum are facing the same way, clockwise. This is going to be the same with the flowers in the wreath, so we get a continual pattern or rhythm within our finished design. I'm now continuing by putting some of the viburnum in the top part of the floral foam. I'm not putting this in as condensed. It's quite important to cover the edges of the wreath base first, but the top part of the foam can receive a more light distribution of the greenery, because what I'm trying to achieve is the domed shape at this point. I want to leave enough floral foam exposed so that we can see where we're putting the insertions of the flowers that will finish the wreath. I'm also putting the viburnum in that same pattern where the tip of the viburnum are all facing in a clockwise direction. The other addition that I'm going to make at this point is some of the leather fern. With the leather fern, I have cut it into smaller pieces by making sure that I make the cut right above the growth node. So I can do quite a few cuts from the one piece of fern to place into the wreath. This fern has a very small stem, so I can push the fern in between the pieces of viburnum right at the base of the wreath again, angling the stems so they're right down on the base of the plastic and also into the center of the wreath so that none of the plastic is showing or will be seen by the customer, and all the mechanics will be hidden. I'm going to continue on and do the leather fern around the outer and inner edges of the floral foam wreath. I'm now going to place some of the flowers into the wreath. I've got the greenery on the outer and inner circle, a loose distribution of greenery on the top of the oasis, and the leather fern. I'm now going to place some support wired miniature gerbera into the wreath frame. What I'm doing again is making sure that I start with the base of my insertion in the base of the foam. But what I'm going to do is zigzag the gerberas by placing one gerbera on the outside of the wreath frame, then a gerbera on the inside of the wreath frame, and continuing this pattern until I've dispersed all the gerberas through the wreath. Our wreath is a symmetrical item, so it needs to have an even distribution of the flowers and the colours throughout the design. So doing this zigzagging pattern will ensure that you achieve symmetry. What you need to do as well is make sure that your gerberas are zigzagging and they're not beside each other when you place them from the inside and the outside of the wreath. So once I've placed my gerbera flowers in that pattern, you'll see that they're zigzagging on the outside and the inside of the wreath. I'm placing the spray roses, which have been shortened off their stem, in between the gerberas and the carnations. I'm continuing with a zigzag pattern, making sure that I distribute the roses evenly on the inside and the outside of the wreath frame, and also at the top of the frame. So I just continue placing the roses through the frame in this pattern. I've now distributed the spray roses throughout the wreath to start to go in between the sim carnations and the mini gerberas, and now I'm going to add some chrysanthemum flowers and some thryptomene, which are both a filler in this particular design. The chrysanthemums I can take off onto the single stems and also place them around in between the roses and the carnations and gerbera. You just need to evenly distribute these around, continuing in that pattern of inside and out, zigzagging between the inner circle of the wreath, the outer edge of the wreath, and also keeping a domed profile so your highest point is in the center of the wreath. I can then also put some of the thryptomene in. The thryptomene is a transitional flower, so it's going to bring all the other elements of the floral wreath together. So I can just place this into, again, on the inside, the outside layer of the wreath, and into the center until we start to fill the whole area with floral material, and our highest point is in the center, and it comes in and over, so we have a side profile of flowers and an inner circle profile of flowers. I've now completed the floral foam wreath shape by placing the flowers evenly distributed around in both size and colour. The primary flowers, the sim carnations and miniature gerberas, are evenly distributed amongst the secondary flowers, the chrysanthemums and spray roses, and the transitional flower, the thryptomene. I'm now going to place a ribbon across the floral foam wreath to make it suitable for a funeral tribute. I've placed some non-woven ribbon on 20 gauge wire, which I'm going to insert the double loop bows into the floral foam, pushing the wire down into the base, and then just adjusting the ribbon so it sits flat across the wreath. This will make it suitable for use as a floral tribute, and the card can be pinned onto one of the ribbons. Also, if this was a satin or solid ribbon, we can print messages or names across the floral foam wreath to make it suitable for a memorial tribute.